And we're back. It's the second half of our newspaper review. We're looking at matters, reopening of learning institutions, of course. A press release yesterday confirming that grade 4, class 8 and Form 4 students will resume learning next week, Monday. Very many parents talking about being found flat-foot on this one. First of all, of course, economically speaking, many parents have been hard hit, either losing jobs or having their business dealt a really big blow. So finances really strained, but also the safety measures being put in place is of key concern. How can they be assured that once they send the children back to school, all measures have been put as far as safety measures are concerned? And it's a key issue. CAS, Zach and Odia are also speaking to that particular challenge and saying as far as physical distancing, social distancing is concerned, they will experience this challenge even as students resume learning. That makes the basis of our question today. Let's have it up on screen. What additional safety measures should the government put as schools reopen? What additional safety measures should the government put as schools reopen? Send us your thoughts, your comments on this. The WhatsApp number is at the bottom of the screen. Let's have some messages up. Government needs to train parents who are from level and above to teach children at home and exams online, because when left at school, it's difficult for 1 meter social distance and are likely to bring it to the family from day school. Okay, that's one school of thought. Hi, I represent those parents and volunteer teachers of the schools from the slums and other informal settlements. There are real challenges to this move owing to its suddenness. Simply put, we are prepared for January 2021. The move is not healthy to our learners, parents and teachers at large. They need time to settle. Otherwise, opening schools for the sake of opening makes no sense to me. I foresee half-baked products at the end of this. Thank you, Mrs. Nzao. Thank you so much for that, Mrs. Nzao. What they have done is not fair, mostly for families who've lost their jobs or are relocated to their rural area. And if you recall, there are all family who were vacated from their homes. Nothing has been done as far as this is concerned. So, speaking to the economics of the day right there, keep those messages coming in. The WhatsApp number is at the bottom of your screen. What additional measures should government put even as schools reopen next Monday? It's a discussion we're having in studio. John Paul Opuko, Gloria Bering also joining us on Skype. Mark Bichachi, part of this particular conversation. So here we are. We are hoping that by Monday we are ready. There was an issue of desks that have been spoken about, the issue that every child should go with 2 masks at least. There's nothing that has been said about this. What are you expecting between now and hopefully by Saturday, so that by the time schools reopen on Monday, parents will be ready? What are you expecting the Ministry of Education to spell out as we get closer to D-Day, Gloria?
I have no expectations from that ministry, because we've been expecting so much and it's been 8 months going to a year and nothing has really been delivered. If you look at the lack of support that they're giving the parents or the students in terms of, like you said, masks, and we even have the KEMSA ones in storage, in terms of sanitizer, in terms of the psychosocial support. In fact, in the press release that was put out yesterday about the reopening of schools, I was very surprised to see how nonchalant they took it. They said, every teacher is encouraged to give psychosocial support to the students throughout this process. And then I asked myself, at the very bare minimum, what is the government doing for support? Because psychosocial support is not something that you hope that every other teacher is an expert in. These are now the areas of synergies which I was expecting that they would say, we'll have 1 hour every week for those reopening, and we have dedicated psychosocial support partners who are going to be coming to talk to these students, because of course they are suffering from serious grievances, having been put out of school, and most of them are experiencing now domestic issues that were not really anticipated. So even in terms of what you're hearing, support, financial support, for me, and I think that is the lowest hanging fruit. When the press conferences, when they were holding the press conference saying that we are going back to school, the first 3 things they should have addressed, because they understand that we're still under the economic recovery, is financial support in terms of school fees. Yes, they have said that if you paid term 1, then you're not expected to pay when you go back. But we are not just talking about 1 term. For a business that has been shut, for people that have lost their jobs, we are talking about a recovery plan in the education sector, meaning the least the government should have done is look into ways into ensuring that let the children go back to school. Let's deal with the financial issues as saying nobody should be sent back home because of lack of school fees, and actually completely remove that school fees, as our president has been trying to do, is give free education for all. And then in terms of the support to the parents and to the students. You know, Jeff, why there's a lot of resistance towards any policies that are coming from that ministry? It's because the Ministry of Education and the government at large has just completely refused to acknowledge that in order for you to get buy-in of any decisions, of any policies that you're coming up with, you must absolutely include those who are going to be affected. And not only the teachers and the guys in the education sector, but the youth, the children. You should have involved them. It would have helped because they feel like they are part of a process, either through their communities or those, we have leaders, you know, prefects or whatever in these institutions. By the time the ministry would have come up with something to put out, then it's a collective responsibility, a collective approach. Therefore, you know, the resistance is not coming in shock. Because if I'm a stakeholder, if I'm a youth, if I'm a child that is involved in these conversations, then by the time I'm going home to tell my parents, hey, prepare, because now the conversation is going that, you know, we are looking to bring class 4 and blah, blah, blah. There is that inclusion. But government has completely sidelined the youth. They've completely sidelined the children. And then they are expecting that whatever policies that they put out, whether it's education, economy, or whatever, that these policies will just be accepted and there will be goodwill from them. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't.
Mark, let me get you in on this one as well, because from a communication point of view, the Ministry of Education hasn't fared very well. We've had it so much so that even CS Magoha had said that he's been misquoted by the media from what they say. And it seems like Jogoo House has been a Tower of Babel. Lots of double speak. Nobody knows what's happening. Stakeholders not sure when they're opening, when they're not. How can they settle this moving forward? Because even as of now, as you can see, people are still very confused. They thought the president had said we are not opening until we are sure our children are safe. A couple of days later, we are opening in 5 days' time. How did they deal with this communication issue?
There is need for the ministry to do two things. Number one is to involve a lot more stakeholder involvement. By stakeholder involvement, I mean, you know, take 20 students to class and show us on TV how you expect they'll be interacting, what is the desk spacing, how do you expect them to handle game time and things like that. So they need to do what we used to do in primary school, which is show and tell. Basically just show Kenyans what exactly is going to go to happen in school. Show us where you expect the sanitizers to be. Will there be hand sanitizers at the door of every class? Or will every child have a little bottle of hand sanitizer on his desk? How exactly are you planning to do this? For boarding schools, show us how the queuing for meals is going to happen. You talked about that if a student is noticed to be coronavirus positive, the school will be closed. Tell us how often are you going to test? And you need to get very grainy with your information. That's the only way you get out of this. But secondly, and this is very important, is you've got to get other people speaking for you. So, for example, you need to get the Parents Association, the chairman, the secretary speaking to this, saying, you know what, we had a meeting, this is what we agreed, so that there is ownership. So it's not just Magoha coming out with a statement, but it's also the stakeholders, the teachers' associations coming out and saying, you know what, this is what we agreed as teachers, this is what we're going to do. So what needs to happen again is you need to have all these people coming and speaking with one voice and showing that they cooperated. And you see, this is what the president did very successfully with the reopening of churches. Part of the reason there was very little backlash from churches is when the statement came out, you saw the pastors themselves, the leaders of religious institutions coming out and saying, this is what we have agreed. That is not the case of what we are seeing from the Ministry of Education. And then you've got to get the people who actually do the work, the teachers themselves, get them, you know, trained and sensitized, just like the way the Ministry of Health took a lot of time to train and sensitize health workers on COVID-19. Tell a teacher, what are they going to do? If a student faints from COVID-19, is the teacher supposed to give mouth-to-mouth resuscitation or not? What does he do? Tell the students, show us on TV What do we do when one of our classmates has shortness of breathing and it's the middle of the night? What do we do? Do we carry him out? Do we touch him or not? So the reason why we are going to struggle with this is we're not giving as much information as is possible. So they need to go to the Ministry of Health, borrow a leaf on how they were doing activations, how they were training people, and actually take that training to the classroom. Finally, what needs to happen is Magoha needs to choose a path and stick to it. He's taken the 5 days notice, let him bite the bullet and let him follow through. Let him make sure that no student is sent home. Let him make sure that the teachers have been paid their dues that is backdated. Let him just make sure that he follows through on this, and Kenyans will forgive him if he actually follows through. If he falls again and postpones from 5 days to another 2 weeks, trust you me, Kenyans will not believe in him again, and he might be in danger of being the least trusted CS. So for me, I would take a few steps, walk to Kagwe's office, walk to Matiangi's office, and find out how they did it and implement the same to my ministry.
As we wait for the Monday date when schools reopen, John, you're conversant with the running of schools, operations of schools. What do you see will be that first week, that second week, that essentially first term, so to speak, as they go back? What are you expecting when students resume?
I think, as I said earlier, we are not going to expect so many kids in school because most of the kids don't report maybe day 1 or day 2 or day 3 because these kids are not there. Some of the teachers are not even around. Some of them even had to maybe go back to the village because, especially when you talk about private and urban schools. Number 3, some of these urban schools, Jeff, have been closed. So here is a scenario where we have a public school, and I'll talk maybe if I base where I'm convinced enough, like Kibra, Olympic Primary School, which has maybe more than 4,000 kids. And we have like 10, 20 schools which have been closed because either they were not able to pay rent, either they were not able to maybe accommodate in terms of paying staff and everything. So each school maybe has like 200 kids. We're going to take these 200 plus kids in each school, maybe like we're talking about 2,000 or 3,000 kids. So this is a problem that the government is going to face. And with the admission of them saying that there's a challenge in their part in terms of desks, we are going to see a scenario whereby most of the kids even will now be able, will be forced now to be sitting maybe at a desk that has to have maybe like 3 or 4 kids. They're sitting maybe 6 or 7. In terms of even the necessary stationery is going to be a challenge. And not only even with the public schools, even in these private schools, upbed schools, I can tell you for a fact it's going to be a problem. So I think even when they talk about psychosocial support, the way Gloria was saying, most of these teachers have gone through trauma, have gone through a lot of psychological issues because of losing jobs. Even marriages are broken. So we are going to see a scenario where there's going to be a backlash, that I can tell you. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be a bit of, what can I say, like some of the parents will be a bit reluctant, will be hesitant to take their kids back to school, especially those parents who are able to do homeschooling, who are able to say that, okay, we can still sit here, we can still do revision, we can still, my kid is in grade 2 or grade 3, we don't worry, we'll be able to repeat the next class. And finally, the way Mark is saying, I think communication was a problem from day 1. That was the main problem. These parents don't have a problem, I can tell you, Jeff. The parents don't have a problem. The problem was communication. And the way Mark is saying, these people are not speaking in one voice. You know, here comes a CS, you have a team of the KEPSA people, you have the NAT and everything. Why can't, at least at some point, even take a back seat? Let the people representing the parents say, we as the Parents Association have decided to do A, B, C, D. At least even the parents will feel like they own the process. So for the CS just to come and at times even don't take questions from you journalists, I think to me was a problem. So if communication was key from day 1, and even now we have parents who have kids in grade 4 and they're not sure why their kids are going to school and the others at home because they don't even understand this CBC thing, you know. Mm-hmm. So why can't you just come and say the reason why we have grade 4 going to school is because of A, B, C, D, so that these parents are well informed about the situation. So I think communication was a bit was a problem, and that's why all this confusion is coming up.
Gloria, even as we envisage the students going back to school next Monday, there's an unforeseen part of this, and those schools that have closed, and some have said that will never be reopened. The private school plight. And it's a story. Very many private school operators felt that it was untenable. Some have gone into different businesses, turned their schools into farms. We saw a story where they've looked for other ways to make ends meet.
And that's what I was going to say. You know, there's an assumption that schools were not affected by the economy, or maybe that assumption is only with the Ministry of Education. From the county that I come from, Kisii County, you know, just yesterday, the Kisii University has closed. They're saying that they don't have the financial capability to continue with their operations. So you can see that there is it's total confusion, because by the time a university is shutting down, and on that same day, in that same breath, we have the Ministry of Education, you know, coming out through their press statement saying we are going back on Monday in 5 days. To me, this whole thing, how I assess it is, Professor Magoha might be a really good professor. He might even have led other institutions, you know, and been successful in those other institutions. He might even have skills that we do not see every day on TV, because we don't interact with him and you don't work with him. But he is a terrible cabinet secretary, and somebody has to say that. And it's the issue on him being a terrible cabinet secretary, that one we already discovered months ago. But the fact that the president has kept him this long, to me, that is an issue of a lost cost fallacy, where you invest in something that or someone, and you know that they are not delivering, and they continue to disappoint you. They continue to plunder you into worse case scenarios, but you continue to keep them. So, you know, it's a failure on leadership from the cabinet secretary, maybe because the assumption that a good professor in any way will, you know, make a good leader. No, that's not necessarily the case, but it's also a failure of leadership from the executive, recognizing that this is a key ministry that requires serious collaboration with serious stakeholders, and it's not something that you can just pick a professor because he's a professor in education and you dump him in there and you hope that he's going to deliver. So I'm actually glad that we have the CAS, Zach Kinuthia, there. As much as he did not come for the show today, I feel as though he brings some level of sobriety, because there is, just like today, I'm shocked that Mark Bichachi has also recognized that government has failed us terribly in this ministry. You see also CAS, Zaki New there, not really recognizing, but he is acknowledging. You know, yesterday he said, yeah, we'll have an issue on social distancing, because we don't have that capacity, we don't have those resources. Now, the step that I really want to push for whoever is listening, whether it is the president or the CS or whoever is in that ministry, I would like to push them to really have a collaborative spirit with the private sector, with the civil society, with government agencies such as Kenya National Qualification Authority, which is doing a superb job during this thing. You cannot solve everything in-house. This is the reason we push for partnerships, public-private partnerships, whether it's other partnerships in government, but there has to be a recognition that I am not a superstar. This is to Magoha, and I must be open to listening to people who might have divergent opinions, and then bring them to the table and try and move us forward. But saying that we are shocked, we are going back to school, yes, that has happened. We are really shocked. It's only a 5 days notice. Even your house girl, you give your house girl 1 month notice before you kick them out of the house. 5 days to put your stuff together to go back to school. We are shocked. But what next? Now we should be thinking, okay, I have made a personal decision as a parent. I cannot afford all the requirements that are needed for me to go back to school. So I am going to either tap into that community learning that has been ongoing, because we know that there has been community learning, whether legal or illegal, ongoing, or I'm going to homeschool my parents if I'm privileged enough, like my kids, if I'm privileged enough, like Mark Bichache, or I'm going to just take my kids. Some people in Kisii, they said, you know, when the schools closed, I had it on radio and I've seen it, that their kids went into farming, commercial farming, and they are thriving. So they are thinking, okay, if my child can you know, put more emphasis on understanding the dynamics of agriculture, the end game really is to ensure that they are getting into careers and sustainable careers. Okay. So I think we are shocked, yes, our government has failed us for sure. Way forward, that child is still yours. You're still a parent, direct them into a way where they will have a career in the next 5 years.
Okay, we're winding up. We'll be talking solutions in just a bit. But Mark, I want to come to you. Even as we look at where we stand right now, do you feel like so far it's been an indictment on the Ministry of Education and Magoha in terms of their capability, or, as you said, is it a communication issue, that they're doing the right thing but not communicating it the right way?
The unfortunate reality is if you don't communicate well and you do the right thing, it becomes very hard to tell. In communication, we have a saying that if a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, did the tree really fall? And that's what is going on. And that's why it is critical for Magoha to follow through on his statement. He cannot be 1 foot in, 1 foot out on this one. If it is 5 days, he's got to stick to 5 days. And then he's got to find a way of communicating every day. He's got to find a way of getting the stakeholders on board. He has to find a way of getting KUPPET and KNUT and all the other stakeholders singing from the same hymn book. He needs to get the cooperation of parents. So he needs to have a lot of engagement, a lot of talks with these people. Now, is he beyond redemption? I don't think so. I think he has the possibility of redeeming himself if he takes the next few weeks and actually focuses on delivering on what he's saying. You know, he's got to make sure those desks are delivered. He's got to make sure that social media is not full of pictures of kids squeezed in a classroom. So he's got a lot of work cut out for him. And you know, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. The parents are about to dig in their forks into this particular thing very soon. But also at the same time, and speaking about homeschooling, it is time he actually now began to create protocols and policies around homeschooling, because we know there are homeschoolers who've been arrested for neglect of their children because they were teaching their children at home. So Magoha needs to actually look at alternative means of education, whether it's community-based education or homeschooling, and actually develop policies around it. That's what he needs to do, and he needs to communicate that as soon as possible. So in my mind's eye, he has a lot of work to do. He needs to hit the ground running. If I were him today, I'd be seen visiting a school. I'd be seen talking to KNUT Secretary General and KUPPET Secretary General. I'd be seen talking to the Ministry of Health and different governors about how they're prepared for having students back in class. So he has a lot to do. So he needs not only to be doing something, but he also needs to be seen and heard doing it. That is going to be the challenge that he's going to have. And he's got to also be able to talk in a very peaceable manner to Kenyans. He's got to almost woo us. That is the challenge that he has. Is he capable of doing it? Well, he's guided this country through tough times before. He just needs to remember who he is and actually walk the talk.
Okay, Mark, let me come to John on this very quickly from where you stand. I mean, from what you're seeing so far, if you had a one-on-one with CS Magoha, what of advice? What to do now?
I don't know if he's someone who can take advice, but I think it's just unfortunate that this thing has happened. But the way Mark is saying, it's already happened. Now all this is water under the bridge. Now is taking the driver's seat and making the car move. Secondly, if we can put down measures, because even the schools that have been going through, we've been filing data every day, talking about teachers who are elderly above 60, if we can introduce shifts. So all these schools and teachers were prepared maybe for something like that. So if you can just sit down and share these views and maybe just have a one-on-one with all these stakeholders and policymakers and the parents, I think it will be a great idea. And lastly, if the second wave of corona, let's assume it is coming, what is going to happen with maybe our kids? And not even the kids. If our kids maybe are immune with the COVID-19, what about our teachers in schools? Are they safe? Because it's not just about the kids in school. It's even the safety of our teachers, our subordinate staff, the gate man at the gate. So it's a wholesome kind of thing. So all these things have to be put in place. And now I think is a high time we say upgrade schools and non-formal schools have been vindicated. I told you in the last show that registering upgrade schools and non-formal schools was not easy. all the way from Mutula Kilonzo, having the regulations with the Kaimenyi, the registration of 2015, up to now, if upper schools and informal schools have been given this opportunity, being registered with the minimum standards that have been put in place, I think all this maybe will not be happening, because at least we'll absorb these skills so that even go to the public, we have private schools that can cater for these skills. But I think now it's high time you should take the driver's seat and consult widely and hear views from other quarters.
Okay,
yes.
Gloria, very quickly, 30 seconds as we close. What's your parting shot even as the clock ticks to October 12th?
I'll keep saying it until 2022, you know? Ignore the youth at your own peril. It's time that the government recognizes that you have to start trusting these young people, empowering them by ensuring that they're brought to the table before you create policies, before you create structures that are going to affect them. Because right now, the biggest, it might be the parents saying they don't want to go to take their kids back to school, but I can tell you for a fact that the students themselves do not want to go back to school on October 12th because they're not prepared. My take would be to the Ministry of Education and particularly to CS Magoha. We are here knocking on the door. Open those doors so that we can tell you what you need for you to look like a superstar in this government.
Okay, we leave it at that as far as it's concerned, and that's why we draw the curtains on this particular conversation, even as it continues. Thank you so much for making time this morning. John Paul Opuko, asante sana.
Asante,
Gloria Orwoba Bering, thank you so much for your time as well.
Thank you.
And of course, virtually always in the conversation, Mark Bichachi, asante sana for your time as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
In case you missed out on any of these stories, of course, you can get your copy of the People Daily straight to your phone. It's only 10 shillings. The number that you dial is star 550 star 4 hash. Once again, the number is star 550 star 4 hash. Dial that number, get yourself a copy of a PD, get fully informed as to the big stories of the day. Short break now. We are back on the side as we get interactive. Good morning.